Hi, welcome back. Welcome to this live premiere if you're currently here. Also, shout out to Henry in the previous video for his super chat. Much appreciated. It was good of him. So today we're going to be taking a look at two different articles, one of which continuing on from the Quinton Simon's case, in which a very young individual ended up being found at a landfill, right? You remember that? The mother being charged and in jail. And we're doing a follow-on from that in which she says she's not guilty. So we'll read through the details, see if it mentions any quotes of her responses, try and analyse it, understand what's going on in her mind, and see if there's any additional details that might have followed on. Bear in mind, this article is from 1 week ago, so it's not exactly new, but I've only just looked up it now. You know, not everyone may follow every single case, so we just bring it back up to speeds so people can follow along and know where things are at. And speaking of which, catching back up with stuff, we're going to also take a look at a timeline, right? An actual timeline of Aiden Clune before he went missing, which mentions key times, key bits of information, okay? So hopefully it should be arranged nicely. We'll read through that, we'll analyse it. I myself will be able to talk more openly about that with Aiden Clune because it kind of has links with Dylan Rounds, okay? I think first of all, we'll take a look at Quinton Simon's case and see the latest news on that. As we go along in the live chat, you can share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions, as well as talk about other stuff in between. You can still talk about Dylan Rounds if you want. If there is any information or suggestions, feel free to leave stuff down below in the comment section as well. Okay? Let's move on to the first article. So, the title of this article reads, Quinton Simon's mom, Leilani, pleads not guilty to murdering Georgia toddler. Georgia is the state, by Ben Kesslen. And this was November the 23rd, 2022, 12:09 p.m. So we'll start reading it from here, okay? The mother of Quinton Simon, the 20-month-old Georgia boy who vanished last month, pleaded not guilty Wednesday after being charged with his disappearance and murder, according to a report. So that's not looking too good, right? But then again, is it a surprise, right? Because most people who have supposedly done bad things are not going to just easily open up and confess just like that, right? You know, we look back at the Dylan Rounds case, we look at Jim Brenner, the supposed main suspect and only suspect. Is he opening up? Not really. Is he confessing? No. Has he previously said he's not guilty for past cases? I believe so. The same with Troy Wadsworth, when he said he wasn't guilty at the time and he's not really caused any issues due to what he did. So we see patterns in certain levels of crime which equals a certain response once they've been apprehended, arrested, and then they're in court. They deny it, right? But then again, could be a level of denial in which they think they're doing nothing wrong, never doing anything wrong. Like, there's been some talks, suggestions by people saying that, yeah, the mother did dispose of Quinton, but did she directly kill him? No, maybe it was more down to neglect whilst taking substances and stuff like that. Quinton was in the bath and may have accidentally drowned because the mother wasn't present or alert with it to actually help. It was too late. And then after that, then decided to dispose of him. Wouldn't it make more sense just to call an ambulance or police, whoever? Did they panic? Or is it more likely they weren't complaining because they had some kind of dark plan, some kind of pre-planned dark plan of getting rid of Quinton, and this accidental one turned out to be a good outcome for them due to the child support, $50 less if you've got one less child or something. These like little numbers and bits of information that are thrown up in the previous articles, it makes you think, is that possible motive to why she acted how she did in the end? You can leave your thoughts down below in the chat. It says a public defender entered the plea on behalf of Leilani Simon, 22 years of age, at Chatham County Court. Simon was initially expected to appear in court herself, but ultimately did not, according to Fox 28 Savannah. The judge denied bail and she will not be allowed out of prison on bond. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because it's one of those things where if she was released, she's like a danger to, in a way, the general public. If you got other families out there in the neighbourhood or out and about in Savannah, she might end up hurting someone else. So, you've got to be strict. Simon first reported her son missing at 9 a.m, October the 5th. He was last seen at the Savannah home she shared with her boyfriend, her 3-year-old son and her mom, who had custody of both children. She allegedly told the police she believed someone took her son. I think at some point it was like the blame was shifted on the actual father, who's elsewhere. And the father would have, gladly taken the child away if there was an issue, but I guess it was too late. The fact that this person, Leilani, reported their son missing and not just keeping it a complete secret, that's when they're trying to think of a plan, right? Leilani, she could have just simply called an ambulance or called the police, and maybe it wouldn't have ended as badly. It wouldn't have been treated, or they wouldn't have treated her as suspicious. You get what I'm saying, right? But the longer you prolong it and then pretend and turn it into something else when it's not, such as, oh, he's gone missing, where could he be? Well, actually, I know where he is. He's there. He's not alive. And because of my recklessness and carelessness, that's the end outcome. But I'm going to shift and slant it in a different way, so not only I get off with it and get away with it, but also that child support is cheaper now. Is that like a motive? Do you agree with that? I don't know how to do a poll for this because it's not like the Dylan Rounds case, but it's a question. You can give your own thoughts and opinions down below in the live chat. Where are we? No motive has been released, but her mum, Billy Jo Howell, previously said she didn't trust her daughter. She hasn't always done the right thing, Howell admitted in an interview. There's Leilani. She does look a bit rough. Bit of a guilty face in a way, I guess. Police ultimately said they believed Quinton was dead and spent weeks combing through a landfill for his remains, which they believed they found on November 18th. To get the denial of bail, prosecutors could reasonably have argued Simon poses a flight risk after she left her town and went boozing with her mum in October, whilst authorities were searching a landfill for her son's remains. Not exactly a normal thing to do. Could it be interpreted as she's boozing, trying to have fun to block out the supposed pain, trying to distract herself, or literally just in a narcissistic way, moving on with life with no remorse? Which way is it slanted? And as you saw above, it said there's no motive released yet, but I revealed a possible motive to why she would do what she did. And you can agree with it, or if you think there's a different motive, list it down below in the comments, okay? Well, she did not break any laws by fleeing her home, where media had been camped out. It was seen as a bad taste that the grieving mother and her mother Hal chose to make the trip. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I just skipped down below because just above is a picture of Quinton Simon, but I don't know if YouTube allows photos of certain age to appear, so that's why I've skipped past it. It carries on to read, they were spotted on the deck of stingrays on Tybee Island. This is in relation, I believe, to the mother and the mother, yeah. Just outside Savannah, Georgia, where they were drinking patron shots on the deck area, being loud and laughing, a restaurant employee told the Post. In an interview with the WTOC TV in late October, Leilani said she still hoped Quinton would be recovered. In quotes, "We want him back in our arms, holding us. That's what we want," she said, adding, "We're just hoping that he's in somebody's house. Maybe they wanted a baby or couldn't have a baby. Maybe they thought that was his saviour. That's our best hope at this point." Whilst she's making this up and trying to act, isn't it interesting how the first excuse or the first story she comes up with is that someone else has taken baby Quinton because they can't have like someone of their own, maybe because they can't get pregnant, maybe because they can't do this or do that, or they don't have a partner or something. So if that was the first idea that came to her mind to make this story up, then what subconsciously she was already thinking before the death of baby Quinton that she wanted to get rid of it. And yet there were actual ways of doing that without actually resorting to this extreme. You see what I'm saying? How she made the story up. There's the image you would have seen previously as they're looking for it. Would have been kind of weird to have found, the remains. Quinton's biological father, Henry Bubba Lee, also said Leilani had blamed him, for the disappearance, telling authorities he had allegedly abducted him in the middle of the night, something he strongly denied. They asked, "Did I have him when was the last time I was in Savannah?" They told me Leilani said I came and got him overnight. Was that it? Okay. Is that it? Okay. So that was just, I guess, a brief little update regarding that case. You can leave your thoughts down below to what you think. You can do a poll right now. Are you surprised that the mother of baby Quinton Simon, Leilani, said she's not guilty, pleading not guilty? Are you surprised by that, or were you expecting her for that response? I'm not surprised in my opinion. We just put that aside for a second. One question I want to put forth is, if any of you have followed this case, watched along on YouTube, maybe by other true crime channels and mystery channels discussing it, has there ever been any resistance or strange behaviour by people? Put aside the fake account that showed up on one channel, which was to do with this case, when someone was impersonating me. Forget that one because that's been talked about previously and resolved. But have you come across any levels of resistance, tension, dark theories people have come up with? People that may be supporting Leilani in some way? People accusing someone else? Do you know like what we've seen with the Dylan Rounds case? How people have acted and behaved, changes in behaviour, drama. Some people may be acting in an inappropriate way. Some kind of false accusation, the wrong people being blamed, people being threatened, that type of resistance. It's kind of like an umbrella when it comes to resistance because it includes a lot of different methods. But let me know in the chat right now if you have witnessed any of that, what you've seen in the Dylan Rounds case, which you have seen as well in the Quinton Simons case. Let me know. If not, then I guess that's a positive, but it seems to be when it comes to true crime and mystery cases, there seems to be a lot of resistance, and it's not always to do with people involved in the outcome of a person going missing. It's just weird individuals messing around along the way, and yet you get many other topics and areas on YouTube which aren't as dark if you get what I'm saying. Then again, maybe if you start chasing the darkness, you enter it, then it will catch up with you, I guess, when looking at these types of cases. So I guess I understand that. Who knows what will happen next with Leilani? Most likely she will get charged and sent down eventually, right? It seems like, although it's gone on for like a month or so, the police were successful in finding the remains. And then there's additional evidence found as well, which, applies her to the crime and whatnot, as you know. Then it should be a level of justice, right? Obviously, it's still not the best outcome. I don't know if anyone else will get charged in between, if there's any people in the background that might have aided and assisted Leilani at some point somehow. I guess we'll find out about that. I think one thing to add notes to, if there are any inaccuracies of that article I read out, you're welcome to correct it down below in the comment section. I would correct it myself, but because I don't follow this case regularly, I'm not going to know what's true and what's false, so I'm limited to what I can say, right? But you can down below. I know that in the last video, which I did on this case, there was a couple of mistakes made, not by me, but by the person that wrote the article, such as it was the other way around when it came to something to do with the protesters and the mother for setting up some kind of memorial outside the house. I think it was the protesters that set it up and not the mother. And then there was some kind of conflict after that. It was a certain way around, okay? You'll know better than me. So I think we're covering that, okay? We just put that aside for now. I don't know if people still cover this case on YouTube. I guess not, because the mother's been charged and they found the remains. What else can you look at? Which does make sense, but unless there's some new leads or new twists and turns down the line, who knows? But I think it's time we move on to Aiden Clune now, which is just as important, if not more, down to the simple fact that he's still missing, just like Dylan Rounds, and it's kind of within the area, not too far away from where Dylan Rounds arguably went missing. And I know some people will not agree with that point, but just in my own mindset, right, it's not extremely far away, okay? I think the distance from near the highway where Aiden skipped across or so to Dylan's farm could be the same distance, if not just a little bit more, compared to Montello. So that's how I base it off, that relevancy of it's not too far. Plus the fact that it's near West Wendover as well, in which, Dylan may have gone down to in the past. Ty Corbyn's been down to, supposedly, Jim Brenner and Don Hately as well. Okay, so it's near to these key locations where suspects have been, not to do with Aiden, but to do with Dylan. But, there could be some kind of weird crossover, but it might take time to discover those links. Take in mind, it's like roughly 1 month before Dylan went missing, Aiden Clune went missing, okay? So it might be harder to establish links, though with time, who knows what will pop up. I think we should get onto the article now and check this timeline out to see if anything's been missed out, if there's any key additional details we've not seen before, and just try and make sense of this overall tales of events, okay? Right, now we're moving on to Aiden Clune. As you can see by the title, as it reads, Timeline Released of Sonomatine Aiden Clune's Movements Before His Disappearance. Below it, it reads, Elko County Sheriffs prepare a final search on Saturday for Aiden Clune, a Sonoma Valley teenager who has been missing since April the 27th. The case has stumped deputies who say Clune walked 21 miles into the desert without stopping. Now, first of all, 21 miles into a desert. Is that quite a lot of distance? Yes. On foot, most definitely. In a desert terrain environment where it's rough and rugged and, the heat as well. But if you're in a different mindset because of issues going on within, you're probably not going to be thinking the same way or feeling the same way. You might be completely oblivious to it. So you might be able to cover that distance, but at what cost? Obviously going missing and possibly, dying, succumbing to the environment, let's say, or if there's any wildlife present. Is there any numbers I can think of which link on from something like this? Well, supposedly Kenny Vici went missing, and one of the alternative theories, as hinted by Kenny Vici himself before going missing, was, in the words of Kenny, if I don't find the M cave, I'll continue walking north, hiking for the next 40 miles or so. And we have done that. We've checked, we've seen how far that could possibly be. I don't think people have been that far out there exploring because it's a completely new area. Most people have gone to Sheep Range, Jome Canyon. But, Kenny Veach might have been in a certain mindset at the time as well, which he was able to cover that distance, but once again, at a cost. That was just an alternative way of looking at it at the time, right? And it just reminds me of this when reading it. So we just scroll down here. What do we have? We've got, I think, 2 images. Am I right? I'm not too sure. So it's like a profile. Missing young adult, last known location, south of Wells, Nevada, on the US 93 highway. Date last seen, April 27th, 2022. Description, age 19, male, 5'8", 125 pounds, brown eyes, brown hair, white. I mean, when you look at his stats, same age as Dylan Rounds, right, when going missing, same gender. As for the height, differs. Dylan has been described as 5'10". Some say 6 foot, around about 5'10". I mean, Aiden's not too far off, let's say. As for the weight, definitely a weight difference, right? Dylan, about 160 pounds, Aiden, 125. That's quite light, but you got to take in mind his height. But then again, the additional factor is if he does have some issues, he might not be eating as much food as other people, right? So that can impact a person's weight. Same coloured hair as Dylan's. Yeah. Let's go and read them. Elko County Sheriff's officials have provided a timeline of Sonoma teenager Aiden Clune's actions on April 27th before he stopped his truck on the US 93 in East Nevada and disappeared 21 miles into the wilderness. Authorities have organized a final search for Clune, which will take place on Saturday. It will include 4 to 6 horses, 4 search and rescue dogs, and local Elko County Sheriff Aitor Narvizia. Okay, I believe this final search has already happened a while back, and obviously they did not find him, so it's still an ongoing mystery. I mean, let's just see. This organised search, does it say exactly what's been used? Horses, dogs. I mean, it makes sense about the rescue dogs, right? Sniff him out, try and find him in that way, find his remains, or if he's alive at the time. But horses, interesting. The question I put forwards, when it came to the Dylan Rounds search, whether it be at the start, middle, or in recent time, have horses ever been used when looking for Dylan? Yes or no? Or was it mainly ATVs, buggies, quad bikes, off-road vehicles, excavators? What? Like, I don't remember hearing anything about horses in the Dylan Rounds case. I didn't see any horses either, aside from those supposed tracks which were from Brenner's horse in the past, right? Why would horses be used for, finding Aiden Clune? Is it just simply down to the terrain and environment. It's not accessible or friendly for vehicles, but horses can just about manage. Maybe that's the reason for it. It says, so far, tracking efforts and aerial searches have failed to yield any new findings, Under Sheriff Justin Ames said. I mean, this is the thing. The difference between Aiden and Dylan. Dylan, it's seen as a homicide case, right? True crime, he's been killed by someone. As for Aiden, it seems more likely just a missing person mystery case, kind of like Kenny Veach. As for the differences with searching for these people, for Dylan, it's looking at the vast open area and then using equipment which can tap into the ground and scan it just in case Dylan has been buried. With Aiden, it's more, well, is Aiden going to really be buried in the ground? No, because no one's been spoken of, or it's not been treated as a murder case, up to now at least. So really, I'll just give my thoughts on the spot. Aiden, out there walking about, ends up succumbing to the environment, the heat, dehydration, no food intake, and or at the time, the wildlife, right? He collapses to the ground. He's just on the ground. Well, if you get a plane flying over, you might be able to see him. But, if animals have come along and, ate him and taken bones away, he's been spread about, right? He's not going to be easy to find. Parts of him might be in a nearby cave. Other parts may be further afar, right? Because first of all, you got the mystery of how far did he go into the desert and in which direction? And then where's the actual spot, the last known spot? That hasn't even been established from the looks of it. Like with Kenny Veach, they were able to use dogs to track his scent up to a certain point, which was the mine shaft. But in this case, it doesn't quite seem the same. Seems more of a mystery, I'd say. Let's kind of read him. It says, and one major question still remains unanswered. Why did Aiden Clune run off into the Nevada wilderness? His footsteps showed he was moving quickly through the terrain, which law enforcement tracked for 21 miles into the high desert before the trail was lost. Okay. They're saying, why would he do that? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? Most people normally wouldn't. But why would Aiden? Because he's supposedly got psychological issues. So he will behave and act differently. Things are going on in his mind. He could be overreacting, but he can't help it. He might see something or hear something which isn't actually there. Not able to think or use reasoning ability because it's all been impacted by the issues going on within, right? So it kind of makes sense to why he would cover that extreme amount of distance, right? If it was a person who doesn't have any mental health issues, you could then say it is more of a mystery because a normal, fit, healthy person, maybe psychologically and possibly physically, then why would they? It makes no sense unless they were being chased down, almost like Chase Venstra in the Dylan Brown's case, supposedly speaking. But that doesn't seem to be the case this time round with Aiden. So I don't think it needs to be worded as remains unanswered. I think you've got the answer staring right at you. You look at Aiden and his past behaviour as well as his medical records, if they're present and they've been noted down, right? The fact that the trail was lost at a certain point, do they mean the trail in footprints, I assume? Footsteps, yeah? Looks like it. It says showed he was moving quickly through the terrain. How did they determine that he was moving quickly? Are they saying that the footsteps, the span between each one, there were long strides, as if he was running or power walking, marching into the desert. That's really the only way you could tell if he was like moving fast, unless simply the footprints were in a certain direction and he did not stop and they were just continuous. Then you could say the person was moving quick as well. But for the footsteps to just vanish after 21 miles, is there a reason for that? Like, why does it just suddenly stop? Is it because the ground no longer displays footprints anymore? Is it because the weather disguised, covered, removed them in some way? You know, like with the Dylan Rounds case, considering the timing of all that, of when things were noted down and spotted, some of the track marks, whether it be vehicles, of its footprints, they lasted for some time or so, I guess because of the weather, first of all. But they remained. I don't know how many still remain to this day, but they were at least recorded and noted down, right? And even when other searchers went to certain areas like the Wash, they saw the tracks as well, which were from previous ones, like the Candice Cooley Big Push, you remember? So, what are your thoughts on this? Why do you think the track marks suddenly were lost? We'll do a brief poll now. Is it because Aiden stopped walking on and that was his final spot? His final footprint was his final moment before he died? Could it be that? He stopped walking up to a certain point because he couldn't no more, or he got attacked? Or did he change direction in some way? Or did he continue on, but the terrain, the ground, no longer displayed footprints, or the weather got rid of them? You choose one in the poll now. Let me know your thoughts. It is a bit weird. It says the investigation has stumped detectives with more than 100 years of combined experience in missing person cases. And if they are unable to locate Clune on Saturday, the investigation will move from a search and rescue effort to a recovery mission. Okay, so what it basically means is search and rescue is trying to find Aiden somewhere alive. A recovery is retrieving his remains. He's gone, he's dead, right? And that's what it's turned to. Is this the actual timeline? The day of Aiden Clune's disappearance at 6:23 a.m. in the morning on April 27th, Clune was seen on video surveillance footage leaving a hotel room alone from the high desert town of Wells, Nevada, according to the sheriff's office. The population of Wells is just over 1,000 people, but it's the crossing point between two major highways, the east to west Interstate 80 and the US Route 93, which travels north to south. That Wednesday morning, Clune drove his 2007 red Nissan Frontier south along US Route 93. Okay. So Wells, just over 1,000 people. I mean, it's more than the likes of Montello and Lucen combined, so that's something, I guess. We have heard about it before with Clune being in a hotel room. Now the question is, what was he doing at a hotel room? And there is video surveillance of it, so that proves he's there, first of all. And it says alone. Hotel room alone. So no one else was with him at any point. So I guess that would rule out Aiden meeting up with someone like Kurt Wadsworth, tied in the Dylan Rounds case, or meeting up with another strange individual, or some kind of cross-dresser app meeting, right? Because it says he's alone. I said, if there's any information as we go along in this, once again, any misinformation, feel free to clear it up down below in the comment section. It's welcomed, okay? Let's continue reading. Shortly after 8 a.m., Clune stopped near Curry, which is considered a ghost town with a population of just 20 people. Yeah, it still doesn't quite compare to Lucin, which has a population of 1 to 3 people. Yeah, and maybe only one person now. It says the town sits about 5,000 feet above sea level, and the mountains that surround the west side of US Route 93 climb more than 8,000 feet into the eastern Nevada sky. The weather was fair. The temperature was a chilly 44 degrees when Clune stopped there. Okay. So what's he doing in Curry? Meeting up with someone? Staying there? Meeting with the grandparents? I'm just trying to remind myself, right? It might be explained down below, but I'm just using my own thoughts as we go along, because I'm sure I saw something about Aiden was originally leaving where he was in a different state and going to go to a trailer which is near the grandmother's, if I'm correct in saying. But then he went in a completely different direction leading up to this point here. Yeah, I get this. Bear in mind, if you want a further backstory before this information and this timeline, then I'll provide a link down below in the pinned comment section, okay? It says, it remains unclear why he pulled over onto the shoulder of the road. Amez said, and without criminal suspicion in the case, authorities say they are unable to break into the vehicle to look for clues. Without keys to start the car or open the door, it is not known if his truck ran out of gas or broke down, Amez said. Authorities have asked Clune's mother for a set of spare keys, but have yet to receive them. Once again, the vehicle, being locked up and abandoned as it is? Kind of like with Dylan Rounds, as his vehicle was just locked up like that. But there's a few differences there, though. Because Dylan wouldn't normally lock it. Because it was probably someone else that locked it. But where it says it was pulled over the side of the road, Jim Terry, I know. But Jim Terry recently brought up with Aiden Clune, I believe, saying that Aiden took off his shoes, walked across onto the other side of the road, and then put his shoes back on or something, which is unusual behaviour. I don't know if that's 100% true, but it wouldn't surprise me. Though you're not really going to be leaving footprints across a road. More likely you'll be leaving footprints on a dirt path where you can, stamp your print into the ground because it's not as solid as tarmac, right? So it would have made more sense to keep the shoes on, then take them off as you walk into the desert, right? You don't leave as much of a print, I guess. But you'd still be leaving indentations in the ground regardless. But once again, whether it's true or not, it's just yet more unusual behaviour, but in Aiden's situation at the time, normal to him, I guess. Where are we at now? So they can't break into his truck, couldn't use force, which, Temperatures in the high desert of northeast Nevada regularly plunged to 20 degrees at night. Clune is believed to have had a black North Face jacket and black high-top sneakers, according to Amez. So it's getting cold at night and he's out there. Could succumb to the temperature, the environment. Is he in the correct state of mind to seek shelter, to try and get into a cave or a mine, to try and stay warm, or find some kind of material to stay warm? I don't think so. He could be walking, running, and eventually his body gets hypothermia, possibly. At least it mentions his clothing, unlike the Dylan Brown's case, which didn't seem to include it on missing person posters, or too often. It's still important to include it as it is a description, and if for whatever reason anyone saw him, or heard of the clothing he used to wear or was wearing on the day, it might stand out more to a person and report. But still, not much Here we go. We move on to the next key timestamp at 8:50 a.m. 50 minutes later. A Nevada Highway Patrol officer discovered Clune's truck on the side of the highway, but did not see the shaggy-headed 125-pound 19-year-old Sonoma resident, right? You know, I can understand, you know, the highway patrol coming across it and inspecting, right, first of all, because at times when you do see vehicles abandoned where they probably shouldn't be or normally are, it does stand out, right? So it catches the attention. Whereas, I guess maybe in other cases and mysteries where a car may have been parked up in a normal looking place, unknown to everyone else, that something dark happened, and it's taken longer to find out the outcome. Or just so happened that the missing person was locked up in the trunk of the car, but because the car didn't appear dodgy looking, no one touched it until it was too late or too obvious, right? It goes on to say, as the investigation continued, authorities learned that Clune ran from his vehicle and headed into nearby hills. Law enforcement officials are still piecing together why. The question I have is, when Aiden was running across and going into the hills, were there any witnesses, people driving by at the time? Did they see Aiden? Has anyone come forth? Is there any farms nearby within the desert that may have seen Aiden running past or trying to seek shelter? Has any of that come forth? Anyone? Any witnesses, or not at all? Was it completely quiet on the road and no one saw it? Which way? Which one was it? In quotes, the tracks showed he ran away and crawled through bushes, Amez said. Clune took only his phone from his vehicle, leaving behind his wallet, a knife, and the rest of his belongings, which officers could see through the windows. Okay. Interesting that he took his phone. Now, has anyone tried calling Aiden? What about phone pings, right? If the phone is on Aiden, then it should reveal where he's at or where he's gone to. It's a way of tracking him, right? But it depends if the phone was turned on. Maybe it was turned off. Interesting, though, that he grabbed his phone and left a knife behind, right? Kind of a good thing in a way. It means you haven't got some person not in the right mind. You know, if you had someone not thinking straight, not in the correct mindset, walking around with a knife, it could be very dangerous. The fact that he left it behind is kind of a positive. He's less of a danger, right? Though he's still a danger to himself, how he's, you know, got himself involved in the desert. Leaving behind the wallet, I mean, you know, running, climbing, crawling through bushes, kind of odd, right? You know, it's like a vast open desert. Vast open desert, you just walk around a bush. He crawled under one. Yeah. What type of bush was it? You know, would it have left a scent? Any DNA in any way? Is that possible? It must have done for them to say that he's crawled under some bushes, right? It says, gust of wind up to 31 miles per hour began to buffer the area that afternoon, and by 7 p.m. the temperature began to drop. That night's low was 40 degrees. At 8:07 p.m. the last ping from Clune's cell phone showed his location southwest of where his vehicle was abandoned. Amez wrote in an email to the Index Tribune, citing Clune's mother. Amez said Clune's phone showed his last Google search was for spark plug replacements. How unusual. The last ping. Southwest. Doesn't directly give coordinates, which is unfortunate. But, it kind of makes sense to why they were able to track Aiden up to a certain point because of the whole phone ping, right? I mean, although they've not found Aiden, it's a positive that Aiden took his phone, so you could at least track him up to a certain point. Because if he didn't have his phone, it would have been even harder. You would have, retrieved less intel on it, right? But Google searching for spark plug replacements. Now, that was his last Google search. But what's the timestamp of this Google search, right? Okay, it says his last ping was southwest of where his vehicle was abandoned. Is that coinciding with the time he turned his phone on to do a Google search? Is that what it means? I assume so. Like, if he, let's say in a different situation, he went on Google and typed in spark plug replacement, and that was whilst he was in the car before he ran away, he could try and justify it and say he might have been reaching a nearby local farmer asking if they've got any, but doesn't seem to be the case. Interesting. The search for Clune will continue this Saturday, which will mark the 17th day the Sonoma Valley teenager has been missing. I spent my whole career helping people in these situations, Ames said, about people being stranded on the highway. We believe there's a reason he took off into the desert, we just don't know why. Okay, so that's it for that timeline. So I feel it was easier to follow this time round in terms of the whole timeline. Though if you want a previous timeline, I don't know how accurate it is because I have watched other videos to gather the bullet points. But if you want a timeline before the 27th or around that, leading up to that date, I said there'll be a link down below of a previous video I've covered. Bear in mind that my level of accuracy or flow on these cases aren't to the same standards as the likes of Kenny Veach or Dylan Rounds, simply because I just don't directly look at these every single day, right? So I just do what I can. But just want to be able to keep up to date with the odd few cases here and there, right? So if I do ever return back to them, I've got some kind of groundwork, right? And I might even save that article as well because it could come in use if I ever do a map analysis. I know police and people like that may have done their own, but no harm in me having a look myself, right, to make sense of it. Let me know what your thoughts are about this timeline and the phone ping, what are your thoughts on that, and the Google search as well. I mean, although Aiden might have psychological issues and running through a desert, which isn't exactly normal, but then doing a Google search for spark plugs. Was he meant to get a replacement, but he forgot, or he did it in the wrong order because he's not thinking straight? Like, if he did a Google search typing in saying, help, I need help, I'm lost, then you sense like he's panicking, right? But spark plugs, right? It seems like a normal Google search, nothing out of the ordinary. Though, the only other question I'd have is, before that spark plug search, what was the previous search before that? Did it follow a certain pattern? Is it to do with car parts, or was it just very random compared to the previous search and then the one before that? Just to establish something at least. But from the looks of it, he's still missing. The case, I would say, has gone cold because you look at updates, there aren't any. None in December, from the looks of it, none in November, maybe none in September either. October. I mean, it is a month before Dylan's gone missing. And the question I have, because I've not really looked too much into it, which ones lasted longer though? Well, I guess in terms of coverage, I would say the Dylan Rounds case has lasted longer in comparison to the Aiden Clune one. Although the Aiden Clune one happened a month before Dylan went missing. As we know, the Dylan Rounds case has been ongoing for many months and has still received a fair bit of coverage, right? At least on YouTube and some news articles. People have been more proactive. So where does it come back? Where does it, how do I word it? How does it match to the Aiden Clune's one in terms of the lifespan? Because although I might be making the odd video now, for the most part of it, things have gone quiet for some time. It's more of a guessing game because there's less to work off, right? Even less witnesses this time round compared to the Dylan Brown's case. At least in the Dylan Brown's case, you had people living on site roughly round where Dylan went missing. With Aiden, it's just a desolate, where what I can do is have a closer look at that desert and see if there are any buildings, barns, trailers, huts, caves, and all of that. I can definitely have a look at some point when there is time. Okay, so if you've got any additional points, any reactions, list it down below. Okay, whether it be the Quinton Simon case or the Aiden Clune one. If you believe there is a link with Aiden's disappearance and Dylan's, feel free to explain down below. Leave your thoughts and suggestions. Okay, I hope you found this video interesting. I'll try and move on to the Don Hately location map analysis next time round. I'm aware that Doug, no thanks, did make a video recently, like last night. Shout out to the people that watched my video last night whilst Salty Pancakes was doing his own live stream, and as well Doug was doing his update and discussing the recent information of the Dylan Brown's case. You know, that sort of stuff that could be of more importance or use. It was good of people to still stick around watching my video at the time, which coincided with that stuff. So that's positive. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and take care. Goodbye.